Welcome to the SeizeYourBusiness.com podcast and video blog. My name is Kevin O'Flaherty from O'Flaherty Law, joined as always by my co-host Jim Wazak from Family Heritage.
Hello, everybody.
And today our guest is Deir from Midwest Business Consulting, and we're going to talk about selling the problem you solve. So kind of how to refine your sales pitch and explain to people what you do in a clear manner. So Bernie, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Bernie. But before we talk about that, I do want to make an announcement to the viewers. Don't try to adjust your picture or anything. Kevin really does have a shadow because he's trying to grow.
I'm going for the beard. I wanted to do it for years. I finally look like an adult.
People worried, hey, is something wrong with my computer? You know.
I feel more manly already. I'm pretty excited about it.
I feel more manly just standing next to me. Okay.
We'll see. My wife has given me the go-ahead so far.
All right. Super. So Bernie, give us a little overview of what you do before we get into our topic.
So Midwest Business Consulting, we really work with a lot of small and medium-sized businesses to solve a variety of business problems. Typically, we're working on things like operations management, process improvement, strategy and growth, so things that are really important to all businesses. A lot of times I market myself as your chief problem solver, so I think a lot of folks that we work with have a great business model. Maybe they're just missing some component of business, and so what we do is we backfill that for a lot of small and medium-sized business owners maybe who can't afford to bring in those skill sets. So we're kind of that outsourced all-in-one shop.
So, our topic today is selling the problem you solve. And, what I experience a lot, and you guys probably do too, is people will say what they do, but they don't talk about what problem that really solves, which I think is limiting. Do you run into that a lot with some of the people you work with?
Absolutely. So, in meeting with a lot of new businesses, you can imagine as a business consultant, the very first question I start with is, "What do you do?" Right? And it never seems to amaze me how challenging it can be for folks to explain what it is that you're selling or what you're trying to do. Sometimes I think that folks don't really have that clear message, and other times it may take 20 or 30 minutes to get to the point, and that's just entirely too long. And so a lot of times, one of the places that we start with small business is helping them to refine that message, ultimately to be able to, we've all heard of the elevator pitch, right? You've got to be able to tell people very, very quickly, very clearly and succinctly what it is that you do. And so in selling the problem that you solve, one of the favorite analogies that I use to kind of help to get people into the zone is I tell them that the problem you solve is not necessarily the skill or the service. Someone who goes to Home Depot and asks for a drill bit doesn't want a drill bit.
Right.
They want a hole.
Right.
The drill bit is just the means to get there. And so the question is, what problem are you solving, and how does your service do that uniquely and add a good value for the customer? And so one of the first things that I start with is, what are you selling? What is it, right? And once you understand the what, okay, and who do you think is going to buy this? A lot of times I find that folks have, you've got a good product, you've got a good service if you're a law firm or if you're selling beach balls, but ultimately you need to understand who is the target demographic, who's the market, who are you trying to connect with. In understanding that solution, you've got to kind of know the customer. I have to know, what do you think is valuable? What is it that I believe? What problems do you have? And then ultimately, as I'm thinking about the value that my product or service brings, how does that solve the problems that you have? My feeling is that from a selling standpoint, solving your problems places the customer places the emphasis square on the customer, and ultimately that's really what we want to talk about, right? I'm my favorite topic, as is everyone.
Right.
And so I think a lot of times we're helping business owners to refine that message, and there's some other things that go into that. So when we finally understand what we're selling and who we want to connect to, and we have a message, we know what we want to say to them, ultimately, how the heck do we get in front of these people, right? How do we place ourselves right in their way so that ultimately our paths will cross, so that now I can take this well-crafted message that we've put together and I can pitch it to you, right? And so a lot of times with a strategy and with a basic business plan to be successful, those are kind of the key chunks, right? And we all know that, right? The who, what, when, where, why, and how. We just reorder it a bit, and we help business owners to do that.
Yeah, I apologize. Let me hang this up.
Oh, I thought
Rookie mistake. We've done 150
Yeah, right.
episodes,
Yeah,
and I haven't learned to turn my phone off.
Yeah, God, I was getting scared there.
So go on, Bernie. I'm sorry, my phone.
Yep, absolutely. And so a lot of times, depending on the nature of the service, so again, if you have a storefront, it's probably a little bit different. But a lot of times for service providers, or again, if you're going to go out and meet folks, having that message really is the first thing. And so again, I've had a number of folks come in and say, I think I need help with my business, and I say, great, Jim, tell me, what do you do? And I get the deer in the headlight look.
Yeah.
And if you haven't made it to that point, if you can't tell me what you do, you can't begin to sell me your service. So once we actually work on that, I would say the next key things that we really push business owners to do, again, to grow that business and to sell that solution, is kind of that 5-minute introduction, which essentially is finding that opportunity to pitch it. From there, we would call that conversion, meaning that hopefully I can get you to either come into my business to see what we do, or maybe very much like law or insurance, we can set up time that we can talk, right? So a 1-hour consultation when I can tell you a bit more about what it is that I do, and ultimately that's where the conversion happens, and hopefully at the end of that, you've got a customer.
So, let's say there's somebody out there who's kind of in that boat where maybe by dumb luck they've gotten a certain amount of business, and maybe they're, for whatever reason, not in a position to bring somebody in to help them figure out what they sell. Is there some step-by-step exercises or some process you could suggest for them to sort of self-identify what they do and who they do it for?
You're saying, like, what process would we follow if somebody brought us in?
Well, let's say like a viewer is thinking to himself, hey, you know what? He's exactly right. I don't know how to describe my business.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest that person do, short of, bringing in a consultant?
Sure. So a few of the things, and this may be helpful, because I think ultimately, let me tell you some of the things that folks do wrong. When you're first starting a business, we have this temptation to try to be all things to all people, and typically you're going to fail there, because ultimately, as I'm trying to explain what I do so much that it's going to naturally fill a 10 or a 15-minute window. And so ultimately, you really want to focus on a few select services. If you do insist on selling a variety of services, a lot of times I would say I would start by asking you what it is that you do, and ask about your business so that I can understand a little more about how my service may be the solution to that. I think a lot of times folks think about a wide net, right, is going to catch more fish, but the concept is you only have so much time, so you only have so much material. The bigger the net gets, the bigger the holes get, and you're going to have a lot of stuff that slips through. So I would really focus your message and decide who you want to be and what it is that you want to sell. I would also tell you that if you are focusing or if you are going to offer more than one service or more than one kind of line of service, it's never appropriate to do it at the same time. And so as an example that I love to give, if Kevin said, I'm a lawyer, right, and we're one of the greatest lawyers in town, and by the way, I also fix transmissions on the side, now I think you're not good at fixing transmissions and you're not a good lawyer.
He actually does do that.
He does a great job. Hopefully just not professional.
Yeah.
And it's not that you can't do it. You just can't do it at the same time, because what's going to happen is my messages are going to get crossed. To an extent, who it is, I have a concept of who I think you should be as a lawyer. If I come in here and it looks like a mechanic shop, my vision of who you are, my perception, which ultimately is the reality. I'm the guy with the money at the end. I'm the customer who's going to spend my dollars with you. And so my perception really is what matters. If I walk in and your facility or your presentation doesn't meet my expectation of what a lawyer should be, ultimately I'm not going to buy from you, because it's hard to reconcile that image. And so I tell people, if you're going to be a professional, insert your skill set, that's who you are, and that's all you are. If you want to go out on the weekends or you want to walk down the street and sell transmissions, do that. But don't tell anyone there at the transmission shop that you're also a lawyer, right? So wear one hat. I would work on practicing your pitch, what I'm going to call the pitch. And I tell people the only way to do that is to do it. Sure. You've got to get out there, throw your hand out there, tell people who you are and what you do. If you're lucky, hopefully you'll mess it up 200 or 300 times before eventually people really start listening. I tell people, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I'm not saying anything profound. The difference is I've said this 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 times, so that generally when I talk, the room listens, right? And so you really want to work on refining your message and then be able to say it and be able to articulate that. Be able to stop and start in the middle, be able to take any lead off.
Well, that's an important point. You know, no one wants to hear an elevator speech. They just want someone who's really comfortable speaking about what they do, right? You know, you've got to be able to speak extemporaneously about why you're great and fit it to the particular situation, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So that's where the practice comes in.
Yeah, and the practice too from having those conversations, Kevin. So again, what I would say is, as a general rule of thumb, if I'm going to one of these events, I don't tell you anything about what I do. I spend the first 5 or 6 or 8 minutes asking you about your business and how's that going and what type of challenges do you have. The reason I do that is, in another life, I did a lot of aviation consulting. If you have a small business, I don't know necessarily that you'd be that fascinated in what I did in aviation. I would really be wasting your time to tell you about that. But if you said, you know, gosh, Bernie, I'll tell you what, you know, I'm looking at competitors and our labor costs are significantly higher than the gentleman down the street, that's something that we can look at. And I might say, well, gosh, Kevin, you know, we do some process improvement, and I can tailor my message, stripping out all of the things that don't pertain to you, because ultimately all you care about is your problem. How do my services solve the problem that you have?
Well, let me ask you this question. So, if you're at some type of event, you meet somebody for the first time, it seems to me it's not very likely they would really tell you the truth about what their biggest challenges are for a whole bunch of reasons. Do you find that happens much, or?
I find that I am a lot like a priest, and for whatever reason, people are dying to talk to me. And so as a general rule of thumb, if I start peppering you with questions and show a genuine interest in what you do and how your business is going, I feel that, again, generally speaking, we're all our favorite topics. People really want to talk about it. They may not delve into financial troubles or real employee burdens and things along those lines, but I can start to kind of glean from that conversation some of the things that might be happening. And I think a lot of times, if I can inflect into that and say, is this happening, or are you finding this? I think a lot of times people step back and say, okay, clearly I'm dealing with someone who's been on the other side of this and someone who understands the unique challenges that are in my business. And I think a lot of times that's where the rapport comes, is that I understand your business and what challenges you're having. And again, I'm telling you how the services that we offer may solve your problems. I find that a lot of times what we do, and Kevin, your business may be similar to this, but we'll give it away to an extent. And so a lot of times I might meet with somebody 3 or 4 or 5 times for coffee over the course of 6 months, and we're helping somebody to walk down a direction, and you're establishing yourself as the expert in that area. And again, I don't care necessarily what it is, but I want to know that whoever I'm going to, if I'm getting my transmission fixed or getting my taxes done or going to a lawyer or going to get insurance, I want to know that you're a professional and you're going to know the answers to that. And that's going to work from developing that rapport.
I think one of the important things you said, to backtrack a little bit, I meet with a lot of people just like you do, and the ones that click are not the ones that are giving me their sales pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to be sold to, and one of the important things you said is find out what their needs are, and I think that's the topic of the whole podcast, but find out what they need, what their story is, and then trim out the fat of whatever pitch you have so that you're directly targeting, if it's, I met with somebody, I've met with many people that do this. We'll sit down and we'll book out a half hour, and the whole half hour is them going through their presentation to me. And we will never connect and build a relationship because it's not I don't want to be sold to. I want to talk about how we can help each other and how we can find a mutual beneficial relationship. So I think, the key ultimately is just being an active listener, really.
You got it.
And just listen to what they're saying, gather the information, and then apply your skill and knowledge to say, well, I'm happy to educate you on this, and here's how I might be able to help. And if they want to go down that road, then great.
I might have you start selling my services, because I'm not kidding. That is spot on. I couldn't have said it better myself. If I don't listen to what you're saying, how do I know? I don't even know what problem you have, so that I can begin to think about how I'm selling or how I might solve that problem. So I think that's a really, really great way to kind of articulate that message.
Well, Bernie, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. And if someone wants to reach out to you and hopefully hire you, how can they reach you?
So the name of the company is Midwest Business Consulting, and you can Google us. We should show up everywhere, hopefully. And the website is www.mbconsultingco.com.
Okay, Jim,
Super.
What do you do again, and how can everybody reach you?
Sell supplemental health insurance, primarily covering cancer. Basically, person who gets cancer, if they think their regular insurance will cover it, it won't. Not totally. So we sell supplemental coverage with the unique feature that we return your money if you don't need it. My telephone number is 630-272-3895. And Kevin, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so we practice almost every area of law. You can call me to schedule a free consultation at 630-324-6666. Go to seizeyourbusiness.com to check out many, many more videos and podcasts from great successful business people that can teach you their secrets like Bernie did today. Go to learn-about-law.com, learn-about-law.com for my legal video blog, podcast, and blog. And I've got a new makingrealestatefun.com podcast and video blog about real estate. So thanks for being here, Bernie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening.